but I became like the top rep in the company and I made not 50% more that year, 300% more. And then I went on to book over 25 million in sales. If an introvert like me can learn how to sell, anybody can do it.
Oh,
Maria Bayer,
a wedding business sales strategist who helps 10 times sales with irresistible selling.
what would you say are some of the fundamentals of what makes a great salesperson?
For me, it's about connection. When you sell to like Target or Best Buy or some big company, you better believe they're smart and you better believe they beat up salespeople, and you learn things in that environment that a small business owner might not ever learn.
What are some of the mistakes you see people making when it comes to high ticket sales?
The biggest mistake I see people make is that, so what's expensive to you could be pocket change to them. Beyonce wants a handbag. She's not going to go to Target and be swayed by a sale on handbags. I don't care if you have 4,000 things in your package. What I care about is how likely am I to get the results that you're promising me? So few people are doing it. It sounds so simple, but almost nobody is doing it. If I could have gone back to my early business owner self and said, focus on.
Okay, Maria, thank you so much for being here on the Success School podcast. I am really looking forward to speaking to you in depth today. Obviously, you have spoken to our Success School members in the membership. You delivered an incredible masterclass all around sales and sort of sales confidence, mindset, high ticket sales, and the feedback was absolutely brilliant. So I was like, we've got to go deeper. Let's get her on the show. Let's do a proper interview with you. I think you're amazing. Obviously, I loved getting to know you when we was over in America earlier this year, and I know you've got so much value to give. So the first thing I just want to say is a massive thank you for everything you do and have been doing. A massive welcome to the show. And for listeners who have got no idea who you are, do you want to just, let's start, I guess, at the beginning. Like, what has led you down this path of now teaching sales, having your own business? Where did it all begin?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Matt. It's great to see you again. We had such a fun time in California, so it's just lovely to be back. So where did it all begin? Oh my goodness. So I went to school actually for finance, and that's what I started in out of college and or university, as you say.
That's right.
And I did that for a number of years, and I really wanted to kind of move up the ladder in that business, and it was a family-owned business at the time. And I remember my boss at the time, I asked him if I could work with like the clients because I was doing internal stuff in finance, right? And he's like, no, that's really not what we want you to do, right? So he kind of like put the put the kibosh on that. And so I just got itchy and I was like, if I stay at a job like this, I'm just going to be making like 5% more each year. And I was doing the math and I was like, no, 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 I cannot wait that long to make more money. So my father was in sales. He was an insurance salesman, and he was the antithesis of what you would think of in terms of a salesperson, right? But I didn't want to go into his business. And I know that made him very sad, but I knew that that's not what I wanted to do. So I found a job in sales. It was actually in software sales. And I remember my boss was telling me, okay, you could probably make about 50% more. And I said, oh, great. Like to me, I was like 20 something. I'm like, yes, I'll make 50% more for sure. So I went back to my boss at the job I was doing finance. And I told him, he was a CFO. And I said, hey, Tony, I'm going to be leaving and I'm going to be making 50% more. And he said, oh, Maria, that's not true. They're lying to you. You can't make 50% more. And it just gutted me. It gutted me. Like it was like a sucker punch because I'd already said yes. So I was committed. I was going one way or the other, but I felt like I was like hoodwinked or something. And I knew it was coming from a place of love from him. He looked at me more like a daughter, but it was still very stereotypic of that time, right? Women can't make as much as men, they can't succeed, etc. So long story short, I went to that job. I did okay. My boss ended up leaving, and then I floundered, and then I got laid off, right? So I was so embarrassed. I didn't even tell my parents, like
Wow.
literally didn't tell my parents. And thank God, found another job because I'm like, I got to make this work because I have so much egg on my face. Like, here I have my boss telling me, like, I'm not going to do that. And then my parents, when I told them I was leaving this very stable job for
Yeah.
software, and they didn't know what the hell software was at the time, they thought I was nuts. And so I didn't tell them. I got another job, did better. And then I started like going up and down in my sales. And I was like, what is going on? Because I had a really good team, really good boss, really taught me a lot of things. And I figured out one day I was driving to work and I had this epiphany and I thought, oh my God, I still think selling is slimy.
Wow.
I
Even though that
still
you'd been doing it all that time.
Well, it hadn't been that long, but it was long enough where I just knew something's up here. Like I know I'm not hitting my potential, but something doesn't feel right. And it just clicked. And that was before mindset was even really a thing. Like
Right.
people were talking about mindset. This was a long time ago. And I knew it. You know how there's certain things in your life that you know in your bones are true, even if no one told you them? You just know it to be truth. I knew that was truth. I knew there was something about mindset that was the sort of the missing link for me. And what really solidified it was I sat down with my boss and I loved him. He was so wonderful. And I said, I can't sell like the other guys. Like, that's not who I am, right? Do I have to do that to be successful? And he said, Maria, no, you do not have to like go golfing with the guys to close a deal.
Mm.
You can be yourself and lean on your strengths. And my strengths, he said, were connecting with people. Like, go meet with more of these clients, go talk to them. That's your strength. You can be successful with your strengths. You do not have to be a cookie cutter of what the guys are doing, right? And the guys were a little more stereotypical and it worked for them. And I'm not here saying it doesn't work. It just wouldn't work for me, right? When I made that connection and he sort of gave me permission, right, to be me and to lean into my strengths. And I was sort of relieved of the belief that you have to sell everybody to be good at sales, or you have to sell a certain way to be good at sales. That just unleashed something in me. And when I realized the connection between my mindset and I started actively changing my mindset, not only did I do well, but I became like the top rep in the company or in our office. And we had no training. Like they didn't train us at all. We trained ourselves. I became the top rep in our company and I made not 50% more that year. I made 300% more.
Wow. Absolutely
300.
amazing. That's
Do you
incredible.
know I wanted so bad to send my paycheck to my last boss and tell him
Why did you
what I
not?
did?
You should have done.
I know, right? But it was such a vindication, right? And then I went on to book over 25 million in sales. So if an introvert like me can learn how to sell, anybody can do it. Anybody can do it.
So tell us about what one thing that I want to hone in on that I really like about that is you said like nobody really taught us. And I wonder if, you said like we had to teach ourselves. I wonder if there's something in that you covered there. People have this perception that there's an old school way of selling. It's slimy, it's sleazy, it's icky. And because of that, they have those connotations. They therefore don't like sales. And I wonder if because you was around maybe some of that and saw some of that and you just didn't identify with it, you've then found almost your own magic formula of what really
Yeah.
works for you. So if we was to break it down based on what you teach, what you do, and your experience, what would you say are some of the fundamentals of what makes a great salesperson?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, it's about connection, right? It's about sales strategy. So when I was in corporate sales, I just learned things. When you sell to like a 3M or Target or Best Buy or some big company, you better believe they're smart and you better believe they beat up salespeople. And you learn things in that environment that a small business owner might not ever learn just because you're not in that environment.
What kind of
So
things? Like, what can you give us an example of the sort of things you learn from that?
yeah, so strategy in terms of like negotiation, right? Which I don't necessarily teach negotiation per se because that's not, as a service provider, you're not going to be negotiating with somebody. Your price is your price and that's it, right? But I had to learn how to negotiate and I had to learn how to stand. very clear in my value. And I was became very good at understanding why they needed my product and how I could help them. And so, especially in software is a very fast-paced, very brutal environment because it's high stakes, it's a lot of money, and they've got the A team working, you know. So in software, I had to know not just my product, which, you know, software evolves every quarter. You had a new release and it was something different. I had to know my product and all of my competitors' products. So I had to be really good. And in corporate, you have to be a little bit more aggressive too. So that's definitely a difference
Mhm.
than with the people that I coach now because it's definitely a softer version of that. But you had to be very aggressive and be like, this is what the other company is telling you. That's not true. This is how we can help you. And let me show you how, right? So you had to be very clear in your value, in your benefits, and not just talk about like features, because that's what most people focus on is features. I had to really understand how my solution solved their problems.
Mhm.
And I had to be very vocal about that and very convicted about that because they're buying your confidence. And that's true for sales across the board. They're buying your confidence. I had to understand psychology and company dynamics. So when you sell in corporate, you have to sell to a committee and a big group of people. And you have to look at all those relationships and see who's reporting to who and who's got the power in the room and who's really making this decision and how does that affect this area of their company because everybody has competing agendas. So corporate sales is a whole other can of worms, but I learned psychology, I learned dynamics, I learned body language, you know, and I weave a lot of that into my training. I teach a lot about psychology, about how to communicate your value, right, in a way that helps people understand and not just talking about, oh, I can do this, this, that, and the other thing for you. Those are like features that people don't care about. You want to focus on what are they going to get at the end of the day? Like what is that going to allow them to do? And that's what you want to focus on. So between that strategy, psychology, and that makes you um, confident
Mhm.
because people are buying your confidence. So that's sort of the trifecta, like psychology, strategy, confidence.
I love that. And I know you speak about that as being people buy confidence, like you've just said there. And I think confidence comes from different things, right? Confidence in your own ability, confidence in what you're selling, confidence that it's the right fit, that this is actually right for them. And that's all stuff I think that people maybe overlook. And quite often, in my experience, it is a mindset thing, it's a confidence thing that is the
Mhm.
blocker between people actually making the sales they're capable of and not doing. Something I'd love you to touch on a little bit more is you referred to yourself there as an introvert
Mhm.
that's gone on to do the 25 million. So if anybody's listening that also would identify as being an introvert, can you give them some tips as an introvert, how you've still gone on to get yourself out there, make the money you've made and be confident in sales yourself?
Yeah. And I still consider myself an introvert. I've gotten out of my shell quite a bit in the last 20 years, but I still consider myself an introvert. I still like lean into that. So what I like to tell people is I prefer introverts selling than extroverts, only because extroverts have a tendency sometimes to sound too slick.
I get
Because
that. I totally agree with that.
right?
Yeah.
It's so natural to them that like case in point, we went to a nursery last week, a plant nursery. We were looking at buying trees. The salesperson was so good, and so natural. I didn't believe him.
So it's
And
like it's rehearsed and it's a performance almost, yeah?
because I think what is his ulterior motive? Like
Yeah.
he's too slick. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it's too much. So I actually prefer to work with people that are introverts because their naturalness comes through and that's I want your integrity to come through. I want you to come through. I don't want you to sound like you're giving them a spiel. And that's part of what my focus is. I want to give you the framework around what to say and what you want to accomplish in your sales call. I want you to sound like you, though. I'm just
Mm.
giving you the framework around it and guidelines. Like, this is what you're trying to accomplish. This is how you can talk about what you do. And here's some questions that you can ask that will help draw out what's important to them. And if you can draw out what's important to them in a way that others can't, you're going to stand out. And by standing out, that's a really great way to win your clients.
I'm just reflecting on that. And I think quite often that's why I do well in what I do, is because I don't try and sound like the perfect salesperson. And I also don't try and make it like what I do is right for everybody. In fact, sometimes people pull me up on, I'll be like, oh, yeah, well, I'm a bit of a knobhead. Or I'll like say stuff jokingly about myself. And people are like, Matt, you shouldn't talk about yourself like that. But it's like, for me, it's a bit of fun. It's a bit of banter. I'm just being me. And that's how I
Yeah.
speak. It's not like I'm actually being super self deprecating. It's more just, I don't know. So I was at a business retreat yesterday, and one of the ladies there, and she's great. I have loads of respect for her. I really like her. But she was like, in her introduction, she was like, and I know I'm the fucking best at what I do, and I'm the best in the world. And I'm just like, it's not quite the same as what you're saying, but it's aligned with that thing of when someone is so rehearsed and polished and they've got this perfect spiel and they've got all this confidence, like to some degree, that becomes, I don't know, it becomes less authentic and genuine and it
Yes.
becomes less relatable. And I think there's something to be said, whether it's to your point about being introverted, whether it's to the point of just being real and a full rounded human. I think
Yes.
that's really endearing. And you've still got to have belief in what you do. And you've still got to know that you can deliver and that this is the right fit for that person. But it doesn't always have to come from this. I don't know. You've obviously had it the same where there's schools of thought and there's teaching around sales where it's like, here's your script. And on page 7, you need to then turn to page 21 and sit. And it's just like, I think quite often you can hear that when you're being sold to in that way.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I I really believe that if you are more of yourself and your authentic self, that's going to show through. And you can be confident in what you offer, but not so polished, right, in your conversation. And I think back to your question, I think for people that feel like, oh, I'm an introvert or I don't like selling, I would say selling doesn't have to look a certain way, right? I'm the first person to say, I'm not the best salesperson in the universe. I'm very good. And I'm very good for people who want to sell in a way that feels good to them so that they can sleep at night, right? I'm not going to sell every person under the sun. I'm going to sell the people that are a good fit for me and I want to have a conversation with them. So for me, sales is about having a conversation. So for somebody that thinks that it's this dog and pony, right? Or you have to be inauthentic, or you have to lie, or you have to be pushy, or try to convince somebody, right? It doesn't have to be that way. And I take a different approach too, in that I don't believe in chasing clients. There's a lot of people that will talk about, the monies and the follow-up, all the fortunes and the follow-up. And that's true in some situations, but I generally will teach my clients, how do you sell in a way where you can get someone to make a decision? Even if that decision's no, I'm okay with that. I would rather you tell me no today than maybe for the next 3 weeks, right? Or 3 months. I don't want to chase you because that changes the dynamic. So I like to set up your sales process so that you give them everything they need to make a decision, even if it's a no, so that you can move on to the next person. But I don't want you chasing. And so I think for a lot of people that are introverts, they shy away from sales because they think it's a lot of chasing and being pushy, right? And trying to convince somebody to buy. And that is not at all. Like, I do not want to even have that kind of a conversation with somebody. I'd rather walk away and talk to somebody who wants to talk to me.
Right. Let's talk about high ticket sales in
Yeah.
particular, because obviously that's the thing, one of the things you specialize in. Do you feel like all business owners and businesses should have a high ticket offer? And with that, what are some of the mistakes you see people making when it comes to high ticket sales?
Yeah. So I think that it could be very advantageous to have a high ticket offer, especially if you're a coach, consultant, service provider. It for a lot of reasons. One is it gives you something very high ticket to sell, right? Which is always a good thing. But from a psychology standpoint, it helps to price anchor, right? So if you see a very high ticket product, it makes the next one seem that much more affordable,
Right.
right? And almost every coach I've ever worked with in my life has had a tiers of offers. And so you look at that high tier and you're like, well, like maybe I can aspire to that someday, but this middle tier seems so affordable now that you're seeing the high ticket. And every business under the sun does that, right? I don't care what you're selling. There's price anchoring in almost anytime you're being sold to, whether it's the grocery store or a high ticket coach, doesn't matter. So from that perspective, I think it's a great idea to have. There's always going to be a percentage of people that want the best. And so they're going to want that high ticket. So even if you're selling 100 people in a year, maybe one wants that high ticket. And that one high ticket is worth, 50 little ones, right? So it's a good idea just from a revenue perspective, from a psychology perspective, and just understanding that some people always want the best and they want that access, right? And if you're willing to give that to them, put a price tag on it and offer that. So I think that's a great idea. Um, the biggest mistake I see people make is that they think that they are their client and they are
Mm.
not. So they sell to them like they're their client. So for me, when I talk to people, I've worked with a lot of people in the wedding industry, for example. So a lot of them want to book what they call luxury clients, right? People that have a luxury budget. Maybe that's a couple $100,000 event, right? Um, what their clients care about is very different than what a more budget consumer like you and I might spend on an event. So when you don't understand who your buyer is and what they care about, you're selling to the wrong thing. So they'll focus a lot about price. They'll focus a lot on what they're including in that package, right? And they'll just load it up. And what's happening is that person on the other end is saying, there's a huge disconnect here. This person doesn't get me. This person doesn't understand that what I care about is the experience you're providing me. I want a once in a lifetime experience. I want something my guests are going to be talking about for years. I want something that's so over the top, whatever it is, right? So you have to understand your audience and be able to sell to what's important to them. And remember, you are not your client most of the time.
This is golden, and I think it just comes back to the basics of having a really clear ideal client avatar, understanding what they need to hear, what messaging they need. And like you said there, quite often with a higher ticket, it's going to be experience based. It's not how can I get as much benefits thrown in and as much bonuses and a bargain and price based and that kind of thing. It's the whole customer experience from
Right.
the beginning, right, all the way through. Um, so I just love that because I think it just reframes it for people. And I think quite often when people haven't charged high ticket before, they start selling how they would buy, and that would be maybe from a place of fear and like, oh my god, that's a lot of money, and you need to like
Right.
convince me, or there's a desperation or a different energy
Right.
around it, right?
Right, right. And you have to remember that what's expensive to you is expensive is so relative. So what's expensive to you could be pocket change to them,
Yeah.
literally. So the example I give my clients a lot is if Beyonce wants a handbag, she's not going to go to Target and be swayed by a sale on handbags. Like she's going to go to Louis Vuitton, she's going to go to Gucci, she's going to go to Birkin, or whatever, Hermes. And that's what they care about. They care about uniqueness. They care about exclusivity. So you have to understand who your client is and sell to that, not sell to this is how many things I have in it and this is how much I can pour
Mm.
into it and this is the value that you're going to get. That's great for a lot of buyers. Don't get me wrong, but you have to understand your audience. And when you're selling high ticket, oftentimes if you're a coach, for example, what that person cares about, I don't care if you have 4,000 things in your package, in your high ticket coaching package. What I care about is how likely am I to get the result that you're promising me,
Yeah.
right? And how likely and how quickly, right? Because then to me it's just a numbers game in my mind. Like if this person costs me $100,000, but I know they can help me make $1 million, and I'm pretty sure that I'm going to make $1 million, I'm going to pay that all day long.
What about, because I reckon in some people's minds, there's a bit of a myth, which is, yeah, but there's very few people like Beyonce level or, that
Mhm.
have that sort of money or, what would you say to them if they hear you say that and they're like, but that's such a small, tiny, tiny percent of people. What was
Yeah.
your response be?
Yeah. Well, it may be a small percent, but everybody, there's tiers below that, right? And they all care about something different. So the point is you have to really make sure you understand who that audience is. So if you're offering something that's higher ticket, you have to know who that ideal client is and what is the transformation or the outcome that they care about most. And that's what you sell to. right? You don't sell to, this is the value you're getting because I'm doing all this for you and I'm including all of this in a package, right? Because they're caring more about what the results that you're going to help them get.
This episode is sponsored by Dr. Tania King-Mohammad. She is the high ticket woman, the #1 best-selling author of the high ticket method, and one of the most sought after high ticket experts in the game. Basically, if you are an entrepreneur who is serious about scaling their business, you need to grab a copy of her book right now. Literally, I have read it and it is a game changer. It will blow your flipping mind. Tania is the mentor that the entrepreneurs call once they are finished playing small and are ready to start charging their worth. Working with Tania is all about creating consistent high ticket sales and doing it in a way where you can create a freedom level income without the constant hustle and grind like a lot of the other mentors bang on about. If you're listening to this show, you already know you're somebody that's meant for more and is willing to go and work for it. So basically, you need to get into Tania's world. Go and grab a copy of her book right now on Amazon and make sure you give her a cheeky little follow on Instagram. She is at Freedom with Tania and she's consistently giving strategies, tips and advice over there for free so you can start charging your worth and actually starting to believe in it.
And I also think it's a bit of a myth that people think a lot of people don't have money. Like, obviously, statistically, not everybody, like there's a lot of people that would find high ticket like out of their range and they're not ready for it and things like that. But I think when you start looking for where do these people hang out and you start networking and you find people who are connected to other people, you start to think there's loads of people that would comfortably and happily and want to buy higher ticket. And actually, I've had conversations with people recently where they've not bought from somebody because it was too cheap. Because they was like, what they're delivering doesn't make sense. If it was really the best, it would be they'd be charging so much more. But I think that can be difficult for people that have not experienced it. And I think that then maybe ties into the point of, you know, once you understand the ideal client, understand where do they hang out, how can you get into those circles, how can you start to meet more of those people as well. Something else I'd love to touch upon with what you're speaking about here is I've heard you speak about the importance of connecting with emotion when it comes to sales. And also you speak about the benefits of the benefit. Do you want to just touch on those kind of topics and what that means?
Yeah. So when I tell people to focus on benefits instead of features, because it's such a common thing, people will just default to telling you all the bullet points, right, that they're giving you, whether it's live in a conversation or on their website or in a proposal, whatever. So I tell people to help them kind of connect those dots. Think of what's the benefit of what you're offering, and then what's the benefit of that, right? So let's say you're a health coach, right? You might be selling a coaching package where they get X number of calls and they get a meal plan and an exercise plan, et cetera, et cetera. Those are features. Those are bullet points. That's important. I'm not saying you don't talk about that, but what that person is really buying is, yes, they're buying losing weight potentially or getting in shape, whatever the case may be, but they're hiring you for more than that. It's for being able to walk into your closet and not feel dread because you know nothing fits. Or what's worse, you are declining social invitations because you don't feel comfortable in your skin, right? You feel insecure. Keep peeling back the layers of that onion and what's the benefit of that benefit and what's the benefit of that benefit? When you talk to that, then you're hitting people's emotions and what they truly care about, right? And if you watch almost any commercial, they do the same thing. If you watch a car commercial, they're not necessarily talking about how fast the car is. They're talking about like, you know, what your status will look like when you're driving that car and the people that will be attracted to you and, you know, what that will do to you, not so much the specifics of the car. So that's what I mean when I talk about the benefit of the benefit, that if people thought about it in those terms, it would be transformative to their sales conversations because so few people are doing it. It sounds so simple, but almost nobody is doing it.
Yeah, it's a great tip. What about some of the best questions to ask when you're having those conversations that you
Yeah.
know are going to help people connect to the right emotion and you know get them more invested, I guess, in the outcome? Is there anything questions wise you can suggest?
Yes. So depending on what it is that you offer, one of my favorite questions is, why do you want to, fill in the blank for what you do? Why do you want to work with a coach? Why do you want to accomplish this goal, right? Why do you want to hire you know, a specific type of accountant if that's what you do, right? Why is that important to you, right? And keep peeling back the layers of that onion, because when you help them understand why it's important to them, then they connect with the true reason, right? And are not just in that logical brain of trying to check the box of, okay, this coach offers this, that, and the other thing. That's where it becomes very logical. And people make decisions emotionally and justify them rationally. So you really want to make sure that you're hitting their emotions so that they connect with what's important to them. And when you do that, you can't put a price tag on those types of emotional benefits. Features you can put a price tag on. And that's one of the reasons why when I work with my clients, I teach them, I want you to look and sound so different from everybody else that they cannot compare you apples and apples, right? They're apples in a completely different category so that there's nothing to compare. When there's nothing to compare, then your price point just went right up, right? Your value just went up because there is nothing to compare. You're not a commodity where somebody can go on Amazon and say, "Oh, it's 50 cents cheaper over here or $3 cheaper over here." That's not what you're selling. You're selling a service and, generally, or not a commodity if you're selling products, and you really want to stand out. And so making your sales process different, the questions that you ask different, the way you sell different, it's going to be really hard for them to compare apples to apples. And that's why my clients are able to charge multiples more of their competition.
Wow. Is that literally, that's the key to it, isn't it? Is making sure you are different and not just doing the same as but I love that you're saying it's from the beginning, it's from the marketing, it's from the messaging, it's from that conversation, finding
Yes,
those ways to not just be copying everybody else, but be in your own league and in your own
yes.
lane. And I think something you said there that is like so important to highlight is people buy from emotion and then they
Mhm.
justify rationally, right? Because again, the rationalization, the logic is the features, right? That's the tick box of we've got this, and people are selling to people's logic instead of the emotion, because people are never going to buy from logic. They'll always, if they really want something, because emotionally they're so attached to it and they want it, even if it doesn't make any logical sense, they'll
Mhm.
find a way to rationalize it secondary, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you just notice when you're out and about in your daily life and you go to buy something, just watch how people sell to you, right? And watch how you make decisions. And you'll realize it's always the way. People buy to save money, save time, or feel good. Those are the three things. And most of the time it's to feel good, right? You want to elevate your status. You want to elevate how you feel and how you're perceived and how you look to others. And if you think about that in the context of what you do, your conversations are going to be very transformed.
This is great. Okay, I've got a question that I think divides people. I think there's two different schools of thought, or at least two different schools of thought. So I just love your thoughts on this. When it comes to higher ticket sales, do you believe you have to get on calls and have conversations, or do you think there's a lot of people out there saying, you can, if your marketing's good and everything else is in place, you can do high ticket sales just through the DMs or WhatsApps or whatever. What's your
Yeah.
stance on it?
Yeah. I personally sell through calls. That's what I do. I do it because I want to make sure that person's a good fit for me. Just because they have money doesn't mean I want to work with them.
Right. Yeah, that's
Right.
such a
And I've
key
had
point.
experience. Yeah, I've had experiences like that. So I have a call with everybody before I let them join even my program. Um, but for sure, if it was a high ticket offer, that's not to say that it doesn't work. I think if you have a relationship with somebody or you've done enough marketing and people know you, right? You absolutely can sell in the DMs. I don't think that that should stop you, but you have to have built up some kind of relationship or built up some sort of um, just public profile where people know you well enough to make that kind of an investment. Just for me personally, I prefer to talk to people because I want it to be a connection. And if I'm selling them like something higher ticket, like a one-on-one with me, where it was a longer term thing, and I was going to be very intimately working with them, I just personally want to talk to someone beforehand. Because if we're going to be like this for a certain period of time, I want to like the person. I want to know that they're coachable, just not only do they have the budget for me, but do I really want to work with this person? So that's just me personally. But I admire people that can sell in the DMs. I think it's amazing. I just haven't done it a lot myself.
I love what you've said is it's about it being the right fit. And I've literally just done a post about this just before this call, which is so for me personally, I don't know like your stance on this, but I kind of say to people because there's those connotations around like sales calls, I think straight away for some people that terminology makes people think, oh, they're gonna use manipulation, they're gonna use persuasive language, and by the end of it, I'm gonna
Yeah.
buy something I don't want. So I purposely say I'm not in the business of sales calls, but I am available to have a conversation, to have a chat, to find out if this is the right fit.
Yeah.
I've just done this post saying that is what the conversation is about is do I think this is the right fit? Like, is this really the right product or service for you? Is it what you're looking for? Is it what you need? Is what we deliver going to get you the outcome you want? Like, it's as much about me figuring out if they are right for the program or for me as it is about them knowing if it's right for them.
Yes.
And I think when you operate in that space or from that approach, because this is kind of my next question really, is any advice you've got around people who just find the idea of selling or getting on Zoom or on the call, like they're fearful of it, they feel nervous, they feel scared. Like
Mhm.
advice around that for me, one of the things is when you stop thinking I need to close these leads and I need to get these deals and you start thinking from a place of service, like is this really going to serve them? Is this the right fit?
Mhm.
Immediately it just feels very different. But have you got any thoughts on that and any tips around
Yeah.
getting rid of the fear around sales calls?
Yes. Yes. We actually, I have a playbook that I give to my clients that teaches them exactly what to do step by step. But 'cause to me, it's helpful to have a framework, right? It's helpful to have sort of this is what you want to accomplish in the call. And one of the pieces that really helps is really setting the expectation of the call in the beginning.
Right.
Right. So I really believe in being transparent and saying, the purpose of this call is for us to get to know each other. And I want to make sure this is a good mutual fit,
Mhm.
not just for you, but for me too, because I want people that are going to be successful, right? I want people that have the right attitude. And I want your expectations of what you can expect from working with me to be correct, right? I don't want them to be off in left field so that you're thinking one thing and we deliver something else. I'm very proud of the fact that I've been doing this well over 10 years and I've had very, very like under one hand of refund requests in that time. And the ones that have were ill.
Wow.
It came down with an illness and I refunded their money. But I'm very proud of that fact because I talk to them and I'm very intentional with my marketing. I'm very intentional about not promising what I can't deliver. I'm intentional about the words that I use. I think that there's a lot of people today that are um, promising the moon and the stars and they don't have a lot to back it up, right? And there's no guardrails, so people can say whatever they want. I'm a big believer in posting real testimonials, like people that you can actually talk to, because I want you to know it's not just like Mary from New York.
Mhm.
It's actually someone that you might actually be in the same circle with and can talk to. But to get back to your question, I like to set the expectation of the call. Like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to make sure it's a good mutual fit on both sides. And at the end of the call, if we both feel like we want to move forward, I'll share with you the next steps to do that. How does that sound?
Yeah. Nice.
It doesn't have to be hard. And and from what's important for people, especially if you are nervous about sales calls, is I like to talk about the place that you come from, like inside, right? Like what's your intention behind everything? And so I look at sales, we spend time talking about what sales truly is. And yes, sales is service. I like to think of sales, I compare it to like being a doctor, right? You don't go to the doctor and say, Doctor, I have this wrong with me and I need this medicine to make me better, right? You go to the doctor and you say, I have these symptoms. And the doctor asks you more questions. The doctor
Mhm.
just doesn't prescribe, right? If they're good, right? But I look at those calls as a way for me to ask questions and diagnose what their challenges are. And I might say to somebody, okay, you've got a leads problem. So that's not necessarily what I help you with. You want to be doing this first. And then this is where I come in and where I can help you. But I look at it from the perspective of I want to understand what you're challenged with. So I'm going to ask you the questions I know to ask to sort of diagnose that problem. And then I'm going to reflect back to you. Okay, this is what I'm seeing. I think you're struggling here because of this. Maybe it's a mindset thing. Maybe it's just a strategy thing. Maybe it's you're priced wrong, right? You need to bump up your pricing. Or whatever, right? It could be any of those things. So I want to be able to share that with them and be able to tell them whether or not they're a good fit. That to me is what a sales call should be. It really should be diagnosing what that problem is, how you might be able to help them if you can. And if you can't, then I can give you a referral or I could tell you I would focus on this first, or here's some free resources. I do that all the time. Not everybody's a good fit. So I'll say, do this first, get results with that, then come back to me, right? Or go work with this other person because this is the issue that you're having that I think working with them is going to help you. And then you can come to me and we can work on X, Y, or Z.
Such good advice, and immediately just sets a different tone for the person delivering as well
Yes.
as for the person receiving
Yeah.
it as well, which is great. We spoke a lot about sales, and I'm sure anybody listening will just be like, "Oh my God, this is so useful," just from approaching it differently and the whole mindset. And I think sales is very much about psychology, and it is mindset predominantly as much as it is strategy. What about business in general? Because a lot of people obviously listen to the show because they're in business. A lot of people are maybe in those early years where it's that kind of, you're going to have to be led by a lot of faith and self-belief because it feels like it, and patience, and it takes a long time to start seeing results for some people. Or maybe people are in that messy middle section where they're not a small business but they're not a huge business and they can't
Right.
afford a huge team. Like, there's a lot of different phases, I think, in business that all come with their own challenges. So I'd love to just hear from your experience in business. What have been maybe some of the tougher times, and importantly, any advice on when you reflect on how you've kept on getting through business? Because I think sometimes it feels like just surviving, let alone thriving. I
Mhm.
think sometimes just staying in business can be the challenge for people. What are some of the things you've done, traits that you attribute to still being here today and continuing to grow and enthusiastically show up, I guess?
Yeah. That it's such an important question because I would be lying if I said I didn't have a lot of like talk me off the ledge moments. Like
Right.
regularly. Like
Wow.
there's always you're one thing as a business owner, there's no there's no guidebook. You don't have a boss telling you what to do and a list of, job responsibilities. You're doing everything as a business owner, and it's really hard to, especially in the beginning and even in the messy middle, to have the funds to be able to hire the people that you need. So you really have to get clear about what's important first, right? And focus on that. And in retrospect, for me, I would have, if I could have gone back, I know you didn't ask this question, but if I could have gone back to my early business owner self and said, focus on list building, right? Focus on getting out there more and focus on building your list and focus on getting more like courses and programs or even little like freebies, opt-ins, whatever, and do more of that, then I would have been I would have excelled faster in my business owner life, right? But it's a tough journey. Like I'd be lying. And I think if I knew what I was in for beforehand, I wouldn't have done it. I would have been too afraid. But I think what keeps you going is the fact that, like, one of the reasons why I left software, I didn't have to leave software. I was making a ton of money. In fact, I became a millionaire at like 40. I made a lot of money. I don't have to do this. I did it because it was sucking the soul out of me. And I did it because I felt like I was making money for other people and not myself, right? I was making money, but it wasn't at the end of the day, I wasn't helping better people's lives. And I really wanted to do something that fed my soul, right? Where I could be in charge. And I knew in my bones that I could be a business owner. And so I felt like just drawn to it. And I kind of knew at an early age that I was going to own a business. I didn't know what it would ever be. If someone said you'd be teaching sales, I would have been like, you're nuts. Like that, no way. Because I thought I was going to go to school for real estate. I had no idea. But I think people that own businesses, we just feel compelled, we feel driven that we want to get something that we're passionate about out into the world. We want to make the world a better place. I've had so many people come to me and say to me after working together, I was this close to giving up. I was this close to closing my business. Thank God I found you because I was ready. Like I was not selling enough. I wasn't bringing enough revenue. And to me, I needed to hear that because that is part of my why, right? Empowering people and allowing them to have businesses that thrive and not have to hate the sales part of it because the way that I was taught how to sell back in the day was all very male driven, very bro style, pushy, and I didn't want to sell that way anymore. And I don't think that's what today's buyer wants either. And so it's important for people to learn how to sell because I don't care if you have a business or if you are just working in a traditional job, you use sales skills every day. You are always selling your experience, selling your opinion, selling your belief. Your kids are selling to you every day, right? I know you and I don't have kids, but if you had kids, they'd be like, Daddy, we want to stay up later. Daddy, we want to go to Disney World.
Yeah.
Daddy, we want ice cream. You know what I mean? Like they know how to ask for what they want. And that's to me what sales is. It's really just communicating your ideas in a way that helps people understand and it helps people understand what's in it for them. And that's just a different take I have on sales in terms of being able to speak to people in a way that benefits them, right? So looking at that other person and saying, how does what I have to offer benefit that person? So how can I talk about it in a way that they understand what's in it for me?
This episode is sponsored by Laura Robson and Back Pocket Office. Now, let me tell you about this one. Laura is somebody you need in your life. I have got her in my life, and all I can say about her is I don't know how I'd live without her. And it's true. If you're anything like me, you will hate tech. You'll be great at launching and creating the marketing material and delivering on the actual product that you're selling. But when it comes to the back end, making sure it's all automated and it all works, I just can't be bothered. And if you're the same, Laura is the solution. Laura is a systems strategist and she's also a certified launch and funnel specialist. And if you are a service provider, if you're a coach, consultant, any kind of online business that provides some kind of online service, then Laura is there to help sort out all your funnels and systems for you. With over 14 years experience, she's somebody who's going to get you solutions quick. She's easy to speak to, very approachable, and just really friendly and nice, basically. So if you are ready to get your systems and your funnels all sorted for you and work with one of the best in the business, go check out backpocketoffice.co.uk and connect with Laura on socials. The links are literally right below this episode in the show notes. Go click it, and I mean this. Go and do it now. You will not regret it.
Maria, this has been so good. Before we finish, we've got kind of some of the general life questions that I ask all guests. So the first one is, what is some of the best advice that you've received in your life and why?
That's a great question. It's not, I don't know if it's one piece of advice that someone gave me, but I grew up believing that you had to do everything yourself and rely on yourself. And I thought that if you asked others for help, it was cheating or weak, I guess. And so I really changed my perspective of that when people said, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But I look at it in a different way that nobody succeeds alone. Nobody has all the skill sets, right? Everybody needs people. And believing that really changed how I think about connecting with other people.
Okay, flip side, some of the worst advice that might have been well-meaning. It might be one of those things you see on the internet that in principle sounds good, but in reality, from your experience, is bad advice.
I think people that say that just because you're charging more means it's worth more, right? I think psychologically there's a connection. For sure, there's a connection there. When something costs more, you automatically attribute more value to it. But I believed that just because other coaches were charging a lot, that they were worth a lot. And so I found out in some cases the hard way, in other cases just listening to other people actually talk about that and say, I spent this much money on a high ticket coach and it really wasn't worth it at all. So that is one thing that I really have sort of changed my belief about, and I really do my homework a lot more before I invest at that level.
Think that's very, very good advice as well for anybody listening. Okay, next question. This show is around helping people live happier, healthier, and more fulfilled lives. So, if you was to leave the listeners with 3 tips for their life so they can live happier, they can be healthier, they can be more fulfilled, what would you say?
I would say you have to listen to your own heart. I have, and I'm perfect example of trying to still live that out because I feel like we do things that we're supposed to do, right? We want to fit into those regular buckets or what society expects of us. And that's sort of the environment I grew up in because that's just how things were back then. And I took a look at the people that I admire, and they're always people that are outside the box. They're always people that buck tradition or buck what is expected and do what they want to do, right? I was sort of raised in a tradition of, you have to follow what everybody else does, and there's a certain order of things. And so it tamps down your belief in really believing that you can have a business in this case that looks the way you want it to look, right? Or that you have to be out there and working 100 hours a week to build a business, because not every business needs to be $1 million business, right? I think it's important for people to know that and understand what it is that you really want out of your business. And it's okay. I think there's a lot of vanity metrics involved with saying, oh, I make $2 million a year. I make this. That's great. Like, I'm not going to say no to making $2 million a year, but you have to just understand that part of that's vanity too. And a lot of those people that are making $2 million a year have expenses of $1.8 million a year, right? Because a lot of that's in ads and what they're paying people, et cetera. So follow your heart, know what's important to you in your business. Like, it's okay if you don't want a bazillion-dollar business. It's okay if you have a lifestyle business that gives you X amount of dollars a year, but allows you to go pick up your kids from school every day, right? There's no shame in that. In fact, I think there's total honor in that because you're honoring yourself, you're honoring your family, you're honoring what's important to you. So those would be my things that I would leave people with.
Maria, I'm sure there'll be lots of people thinking, I need more of you in my life. I need to know where to follow you, where to find you. Will you just let people know if they do want to connect with you on social media, or if they want to get more of what you do, where can they go?
Yes, I would love for you to join me and send me a note on Instagram. I'm at Maria Bayer 1, the number 1. And I also have a book a client in 5-day challenge. It's a free challenge. You can get a taste of my coaching, and it'll help you book a client in 5 days or less. And those are the main places to find me. And I would love to chat with your audience.
Amazing. Okay, final question before we finish that I ask all the guests. Maria, what is your definition of success?
My definition of success is having a well-rounded life, right? Not working 24/7. And I know that there's different seasons in life, right? There's different seasons where we were talking about this earlier before we hit the record button. And in the beginning of your business, it's a lot of hustle. We're not going to lie, it's a lot of hustle. But I also want to keep in mind um, that there's a life to live, right? It's not just about succeeding in business, it's about succeeding in life. And to me, succeeding in life is having really good relationships with, in my case, my husband, my kids. Now, God, we're having grandchildren. We have one and one on the way, believe it or not. I want to create a legacy for them, right? I want to create memories with them as they grow up, and I want to have time for that. So for me, success is having deep relationships with people. It's with giving people the most I can in my business and having them see that transformation in their sales and how they feel about themselves and how that translates to more confidence, not just in their business, but in the rest of their life. So for me, that's what success is, really just the friendships, the relationships, and and being successful in business, because let's be honest, like that's what fuels us. We really enjoy making a difference in people's lives. And part of the barometer of that is sales. And it's an easy way to measure the impact that you're having with people. So I think it's a little bit of all those things, but to me, it's mostly about relationships.
Maria, thank you so much. This has been brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. It was great to be with you, and you're so easy to talk to. I love having conversations with you.
Ah, thank you.